Well, Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record 40 years ago today, but he says not much has changed in terms of racial landscape. When asked by Bob Nightingale why he keeps threatening letters of that time, he says this: well, it's to remind myself that we are not far removed from when I was chasing the record. If you think that, you're fooling yourself. A lot of things have happened in this country, but we have so far to go. There's not a whole lot that's changed. We can talk about baseball, talk about politics. Sure, this country has a black president, but when you look at a black president, President Obama is left with his foot stuck in the mud from all the Republicans with the way he's treated. We have moved in the right direction and there have been improvements, but we still have a long ways to go in this country. The bigger difference is that back then they had hoods. Now they have neckties and starched shirts. In regards to baseball, he says, when I first started playing, you had a lot of black players in the major leagues. Now you don't have any. So what progress have we made? You try to understand, but we're going backwards. Skip, as mentioned earlier, you brought this to our attention, and I encourage you at home to read the article. It's really long and in-depth. But Stephen A., I'll turn to you first. We'll do our best to break this down. Your reaction?
Well, it hurts to hear that such an iconic figure, wonderful man, still carries those demons around. It hurts because, me personally, I don't like for anyone, particularly any of us, to be so incredibly affected years later. But it brings to mind one of the things that I think permeates our society in such a way that folks outside the black community simply don't get this, and they need to get it. And anytime we bring up a discussion of race, you hear white folks, particularly towards somebody like myself, being accused, where I'm accused of race baiting and things of that nature. What white America needs to recognize is that I'm actually honored that they would call me that. It actually makes me smile, because I don't have a problem that is plaguing Hank Aaron right now. Of all the things that Hank Aaron said in his article in USA Today, superbly written and reported on by Bob Nightingale yet again, one of the things that everybody needs to pick up is the paragraph where they're talking about isolationism. It says here, it wasn't just the thousands of hate letters and death threats. He could handle those. It was the isolation. He couldn't even stay in the same hotel as his teammates. His name was listed in one room and he checked into another. Constantly he had a security guard by his side, and then it went on to talk about how the players were once told there was this guy in a red coat that was going to be in the stands and he was expected to try and shoot Hank Aaron. And Hank told us not to sit by him on the bench. They couldn't concentrate on the game. Hank Aaron had to go through all of this. Skip, this is 2014. It's the first time I heard that story.
Really?
The point that I'm trying to make to you is that there are a lot of details that I've heard about what Hank Aaron had to endure and what he went through. But by and large, one of the biggest problems that America doesn't accept, what people outside of the black community don't understand, is outside of the insidious behavior of the very few, not the majority, not the many, but the few, one of the bigger issues is that you can't talk about it. Because when you talk about it, you're considered somebody that's whining and complaining, and you're holding on to stuff you should let go of and all of this other stuff. You don't have the license to exhale, to express yourself and to let it go, because no one ever lets you. What they do is, the second you bring it up, oh, you're holding on to this. Oh, you're race baiting. Oh, this guy's a racist. I mean, really? Really? So I'm talking about what's been done, and I'm the racist. This is how some people in white America think. You bring it up, you discuss it, you bring attention to it, and you're the problem, because you're highlighting what you endured and what you had to go through. The fact is, throughout history, one of the biggest problems, one of the things that makes the Jewish community so successful and, in my eyes, admirable, is that they don't let you forget what they had to endure. And more importantly, they don't wait. They let you know. You do something, they pounce on it. We're going to stop it. We're going to nip it in the bud because we're not going to let you allow this to circulate, gain momentum, and then ultimately you dictate when it's swept under the rug and hidden and no longer discussed. That's why, even though they have a lot of their own issues to resolve, as they would tell you, they're together and they're all right because they don't have to hold on to this. They choose to, and they're not judged because of it. It's accepted, and we understand it, and we appreciate them, and as a result, they're a significant part of our society. As African Americans, we've rarely been allowed to do that when it's going on. We always got to wait, which means you're holding it inside, you're allowing it to fester and build up, and then people wonder why you might come across as a bit perturbed or angry or anything like that. Maybe if you allowed the man to speak on this years ago and he didn't have to worry about so many things, maybe he would be in a better place today instead of, as Dusty Baker would say, walking around with some of the stuff that most folks never would.
Okay, for the record, the spring after Hank Aaron broke the home run record of a longtime beloved, iconic white slugger named Babe Ruth, I was at the Miami Herald, and I was assigned to write stories about the Atlanta Braves in West Palm Beach, Florida, where they were in spring training. And I tried to talk to Hank about what he went through. Now, there were lots of stories out there about all the hate mail that he had received, maybe not quite to the depth and the gory detail that you just pointed out. But I did talk to a number of his teammates, a Ralph Garr, a Davey Johnson, about what Hank went through, and I wrote about that. I tried to get Hank to talk about it, and I was told he does not do interviews at all. And you know, I couldn't blame him, because clearly he was wary of reporters in general, because I'm pretty sure they were all white. I can't remember for sure, but it seemed like the media contingent at that point was pretty much all white. So I respected and appreciated that. But I heard a lot of what he went through, just for the record. And I get now, we're at age 80, he's still pretty bitter about what he went through, and I cannot blame him 1 ounce for that. So let's go bigger picture here, from my perspective. Obviously, as Hank says, we have come a long ways in race relations in this country, both in and out of sports. We have so far to go. He points out CEOs, owners of teams. We got a long ways to go in those categories. Now, the most powerful line that he uttered was, back then they had hoods, now they have neckties and starched shirts. There's a lot of truth to that. But when Hank again reaches for the line that there are no black players in baseball, and it is actually last year 7.7%, that's where he starts to lose me a little bit, because he's not understanding the why of that. It still comes across that the reason there are no black players, quote unquote, no black players in baseball, is because somehow white America doesn't want black players in baseball, which is so absolutely wrong from my perspective. I can only tell you what I see. I grew up through the 60s with nothing but black stars. I've told you again and again, the St. Louis Cardinals were my team, and trust me, Bob Gibson was my guy. Lou Brock was my guy. Bill White was my guy. It was the era of great black players who dominated the game. What happened? Did white America say no to black baseball players? Did they somehow surreptitiously make sure that no. I believe in the biggest picture, and we can argue this all day and all night, but because the numbers I pulled up this morning, the NBA is 76% African American. The NFL, I found a number that was 66%. It seems like it was higher than that, but this past year. But the reason to me is that black kids started to gravitate away from the game of baseball because it's tedious and boring.
It takes too long.
It just takes too long. And it's wearing kids out, and they're not having fun playing baseball. And football and basketball are a blast to play. I get that, okay? So Hank's not giving in to that part of it. And we talked about golf, with my last quick point, last week. And I tried to explain to you, in my childhood, there were a whole bunch of black golfers who were really, really good, and I listed them off for you. Lee Elder and Charlie Sifford and Jim Thorpe and Jim Dent and Calvin Pete, and I can go on and on. They were all really good. They won pro golf tournaments. Now there are 0 except for Tiger Woods. Wow. What happened? Is white America trying to run black kids out of golf? No. In fact, I told you I've done my small part of the First Tee program in Oklahoma City to help it. I don't know. I don't want. You're making me feel shame for this when I don't think I should feel any shame. I want blacks to play golf. Do you see what I mean? So
you're completely correct. First of all, don't even waste your breath on it. You're absolutely right. Take 3 things into consideration when you talk about the paucity of African Americans in the sport of baseball. Cost is 1. Foreign players is number 2. And the length of time it takes to get to the majors is number 3. When you come from a relatively depraved or desolate background, as a lot of the minority players do, you ain't trying to wait 3 to 5 years to get to the majors when the alternative is to play in another sport which will let you obtain riches relatively quicker. More importantly, you're not going to trust a system that you believe is inherently against you, because you're talking about 3 to 5 years where you're subjected to a bureaucracy, for lack of a better word. You're subjected to opinions. You're subjected to things behind the curtain where the politics influence what is relatively supposed to be a meritocracy. You're not trusting that.
Yeah.
Then when you combine that with the cost, you combine that with the foreign players, you combine that with the fact that scouts are looking at foreign players as opposed to going into the black community to look for those players, because the foreign players are more into baseball. You have a better shot at finding guys that way. All of that stuff contributes. Hank Aaron clearly misses that.
He doesn't get that.
But here's the point. The bigger point is, why does he miss it? Not that he's missing it. He's 80 years old. He's not as entrenched in the sport of baseball, some would argue, than younger folks would be. Why would he miss it is the question. The reason why is simple. He would miss it because the residue of what he endured still sits with him. And I mean no disrespect, not an insulting word, towards Commissioner Bud Selig, who I know loves Hank Aaron and befriended Hank Aaron and applauds him and celebrates him every chance he gets. And I totally respect and applaud Bud Selig for this. But what people in his position, and dare I say people outside the white community, outside the black community, repeatedly miss is one key element, Skip. They are so quick to celebrate Hank Aaron, what he endured, and how he conducted himself. They never take the time to ask themselves, what if he got angry? What if he lashed out?
What happened?
What if he lost it and just said, I'm tired of these threats. I'm tired of sitting in the clubhouse or coming up to bat, wondering whether or not somebody's going to put a bullet through me. I am furious over this, and just lost it. He would have been the angry black dude.
And it's not okay to be angry.
And it's not okay to be angry, Kerry. Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron celebrated for the same thing. They were the right kind of guy to do this. Really? Well, what did it cost them? Because at 80 years of age, Hank Aaron still has a difficult time enjoying life and enjoying the sport that he loves because of what he had to endure. And what we want to do, what we're doing at the end, is applauding what he had the composure to endure, instead of really bringing to light that maybe the justifiable anger sometimes is okay too. It's a reason why you had Dr. Martin Luther King, but you also had Malcolm X. Peace at any cost. Malcolm X, by any means necessary. And folks, I'm going to say this last point because it's very important. I never said this on national television before, Skip, but I'm going to break it down to you this way. And I said it before. And I said it in a magazine article in Philadelphia Magazine a few years ago. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was preaching nonviolence, equality for all, peace, etc., he had dogs sicked on him. He was hit with batons. He was hosed down. He was incarcerated. And people outside the black community sat there and gave him the proverbial finger and said, we could give 2 cents about what you want or what you think. Right? Then Malcolm X came along and said, by any means necessary, an eye for an eye. You do this to us, we're going to do this to you. You know what those same folks said? Why can't you be more like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Yeah. So it took a rebel for us to appreciate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. more. Maybe we should learn something from that. That's all I got to say.
Well said.
Of the 750 players on opening day rosters, only 62 of those players were black, going back to your point of 7.7%.